The Beeb says it's having a frank conversation with Gary Lineker after the former footballer, let's say, went offside and tweeted critically about the government's asylum policy, whilst also comparing the language used around it to that of Nazi Germany. Yesterday, Gary posted a video of Home Secretary Suella Braverman talking about stopping the boats, along with this comment: "Good heavens, this is beyond awful." And then, when he was challenged by one of his followers, he replied, "There is no huge influx. We take far fewer refugees than any other major European countries. This is just an immeasurably cruel policy directed at the most vulnerable people in language that is not dissimilar to that used by Germany in the 30s. And I'm out of order?" This morning, still at it, he tweeted, "Great to see the freedom of speech champions out in force this morning, demanding silence from those with whom they disagree." Now, meanwhile, Home Secretary Suella Braverman said she was disappointed by the comments when she spoke exclusively earlier to Talk TV.
I'm disappointed about Gary Lineker's comments. I don't think it's appropriate for him to be equating our measures with Nazi Germany. Our measures are on the side of the British people. We are making it clear that if you arrive here illegally, you'll be detained and swiftly removed. That's what the British people want to see. That's what they want us to do, and we are doing it.
Should he be sacked?
That's a matter for the BBC. I'm not going to get involved in their own internal HR matters.
So the BBC, bless it, is under fire for not dealing with Gary more harshly. And this is basically the latest in a long line of controversies coming from the corporation paid for, my friends, by me, you, all of your family and every licence fee payer. Now, the panel are still here. Plus, I'd like to introduce a good old friend of mine, Talk TV legend, Nicola Thorp. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Straight to it. Let's sack Gary Lineker.
Absolutely not. What's he done wrong? He was pointing out facts. The language that has been used by Suella Braverman over the past few months, and particularly yesterday, was reminiscent of 1930s.
But how
Germany.
hypocritical the BBC. My esteemed colleague and good friend of mine, Piers Morgan, got sacked for having an opinion, OK? What is the difference, OK? We pay Gary Lineker's salary, and the problem that people have, Nick, about Gary Lineker is he spouts off while sitting in his multi-million-pound house and enjoying all the trappings. Do you not remember the World Cup when he talked about the human rights abuses in Qatar whilst getting £400,000 to promote a channel? The guy's a hypocrite.
I don't think he's
a massive hypocrite.
He's taken in a refugee in the past himself, and the comparison with Piers, I mean, I don't really want to get into that, but we're talking about a BBC presenter here who's supposed to be impartial. While I agree with you that BBC policy is that they're not supposed to be critical of government policy.
But he always gets away with it.
Well, I think, what he said is simply true.
Do you think he'll have upset any Jewish people today by the reference to Nazi Germany, just out of interest?
No, he's not saying what this government are doing is equal to what eventually happened in 1930s going into 40s
Why doesn't he just shut
Germany.
his mouth, seriously?
Because why not? We're the home of free speech. We love opinionated people here. Why should he not have an opinion on this?
What do you think about it, Gina?
I think he's absolutely entitled to his opinion. And he wasn't saying it on the BBC. At the time, they'd have... I mean, we're conflating two issues as well here, because in your introduction, you were talking about the BBC and have they gone too far. He's using his right to freedom of speech. And if you equate that to the BBC actually has a constitutional standing because of its royal charter. You can't just shut down the BBC. And politicians for years play this yet another political football with the BBC. It is there as part of our constitution. It has a very important role in our society. Yes, there are issues about should they have means tested for their licence fee. We can have debates around that. But conflating someone's freedom of speech or right to speak freely and the fact they work for the BBC are two different things.
Candice?
It's not the same.
Candice, thoughts?
Yes, well, I'm a bit of a free speech absolutist, so I think he should be able to express his opinion, but I really disagreed with what he said, and I really don't like it when people use those sorts of references, because I think it stifles public discourse, because people immediately step back. Oh, I don't want to be... Wait, let me finish. Wait, you had your chance, let me speak. People immediately step back and think, I don't want to be associated with Nazism. And they might have a moderate view on immigration, but they feel frozen out by the debate. So I really disagree with what he said.
But he never said the word
allowed
Nazi
to say it.
He never said the word Nazi.
He did. He compared... Oh, no, he didn't. No, you're right, he didn't. He just said 1930s German rhetoric, which is true. It absolutely is true. At the time, there was this, within German and also over here in the Daily Mail at the time, there was this othering of people. If you look at the words... the actual definition, of a concentration camp. I'm not talking about an extermination camp. A concentration camp is where a group of people are detained without... are arrested without being tried. That's what they're suggesting.
Denise, help me out. When you sign up to your multi-million-pound contract, you talk about the home of free speech, but there are people here at Talk, but there are people at the BBC that can't do anything. Why does Lineker seem to be able to spout forth the whole time and get away with it? That's what I want to know.
I think the reason that he's able to give the views he gives is because of the amplification that he has. He has, I think, 9 million followers. And the difference between him speaking is
That'll upset peers.
Yeah, but the difference between him speaking and others speaking is that he gets a much wider audience. And if you think about Keir Starmer's response, his response was rather muted. Why? Because he is trying to ensure he gets votes going forward.
OK, but
Gary Lineker's not interested in votes.
All right, but bear in mind, if it's all OK, why are the BBC having a frank conversation with him tonight, then?
People have frank conversations all the time. The frank conversation will probably be, listen, mate, you can have your own opinion, but you've got to make it clear that it's not the opinion of the BBC.
We asked, in the light of Gary Lineker airing his political views, I can't wait for Gina Miller on this on Twitter, do you think the BBC should be a subscription service? Yes, 86%, 14% no. Paul says, I don't like being forced paying for something I don't want or watch. Kelly says, Jez, the TV licence needs to go. The longest and biggest scam in history. Gary, it's not Lineker, I suspect. It should be subscription only or closed down. Peter, only the sheep would pay. Thoughts?
I think if it went to a subscription-only model, it would be quite successful. A lot of people love the BBC output, and it's not just the politics. A lot of people watch the music documentaries, the nature documentaries, and those are quite unique. However, having said that, I don't know if they could fund them without a licence fee. With a subscription model, you might get...
Couldn't.
Exactly. A subscription model, you won't get things that have sort of niche interests.
Could I just say that the criticism that's being levelled at the BBC is primarily because of the media marketplace. And
media marketplace?
Yes, it's a media marketplace.
What does that mean?
Essentially, it means that there's several players, some of them new, and that we all want to share.
All right, so let me put this to you as you sit here on Talk. Let me say this to you. You talk about the media marketplace.
Yes.
Will you explain to me how you justify paying that money to a corporation that Bill Cosby's documentary and a Jimmy Savile drama is being paid for by our money and is going to go out on the BBC, because most people would find that utterly repugnant?
The point I was going to make before I addressed the point you just raised is essentially that it's a marketplace and any opportunity to lambaste the biggest player will be taken. In relation to the content creation, people will create different content. It's not necessarily all the content that you like. You don't have to watch. You can switch over.
There's huge value in making documentaries and dramas about prolific sex offenders. That there is value in that. And whilst I understand that a lot of the victims, some of the victims have come forward and saying a dramatisation is not suitable, we need to learn these lessons through
OK, but let's talk about
it's actually one of the BBC's core principles and establishments under the Royal Charter I keep going back to is education.
So let's talk about the Bill Cosby doco if we can. It sparked outrage after a sex therapist suggested men who have a fetish about sex with unconscious partners should be able to pay women to be drugged. Those remarks were made by sex therapist Sonali Rashatar. That's appalling.
Absolutely appalling.
And you think that's all right to put it out there?
No, it's not OK.
So are the BBC... You're going to say to me they're opening people's eyes. I'm going to say that's irresponsible.
It is irresponsible. I'm totally with you, but I'm not going to say that the BBC should be shut down.
But you're saying our money is all right to be paid for that, and you're saying it's choice, yeah?
I'm simply saying is that the BBC will always be lambasted. Their content is not going to be for everyone's taste. And who's going to agree with that line of thinking anyway for anyone to put that forward? Nobody.
Are you surprised that they've put that out, the BBC?
I was. I didn't know why it wasn't challenged. I mean, what she was saying was so objectionable, talking about unconscious bodies and people getting their kink out. It was disturbing. That was a disturbing message to put out
there.
But
that is something that does happen in documentaries where, you'll have somebody with such a strong and controversial view that isn't challenged so that it's put out there for the audience to make their minds up. And I would hope that people watch it.
I disagree, because I think when they watched that back, before they actually, when it was on the editing, when they were editing
they should have gone.
They should have gone. Yeah. Somebody so higher up should have actually, that programme should not have gone out. Because the idea that you're saying, you're excusing violent drugged rape of women and saying that it's, as long as it's permission, as long as a woman gives permission to be made unconscious and then violated. I mean, the whole concept...
But they weren't advocating.
The point that I'm trying to make...
The
point that I'm trying to make, and you say that we're aiming our guns, if you like, at the big player, is you take the Savile drama with Steve Coogan that has been put back and put back. There are real concerns that one of the main reasons that this is not going to be shown until after the coronation is because of Prince Charles's close alleged relationship or his knowledge about Savile. That says nothing about the BBC again, does it?
Well, I didn't know about that.
Well, they did have a close
Just raised
relationship.
that.
That is fact.
I didn't know that.
Savile, Jimmy Savile was an advisor.
Why did you make
to
that
King
if you're
Charles.
never going to play it?
It's totally. You know, I used to be an actress. It's very.
Did you?
Yes, I did.
On what?
It's normal.
On what?
Coronation Street.
I know. You see, you got it in there. I used to walk along the cobbles and see you. Anyway, used to ignore me.
But it's very normal for production companies to make something and then it was made by ITV, but it gets
Never heard of them.
delayed and delayed and delayed. And perhaps it will never come out. But I think it is right for them to review it and make sure that when it does come out, it's done in the best possible edit.
So we all agree about freedom of speech, and Lineker gets away with it again. And the BBC, should it be a subscription service? I think that's what a lot of people would want to debate. Denise, thank you very much indeed. You've all been amazing. Much more on JK Live.